Welcome to our Workforce Development webinar series. We are so glad you're here. The labor shortage continues to place a heavier and heavier burden on the economy. And as companies struggle to find the talent they need, and as more and more people opt out of work, now is the time to invest in new and more strategic approaches to developing talent and helping people find their way in the labor market. My name is Jennifer Kolb, and I'm the Vice President of Business Development at Tallo. And joining me is James Richter, Director of Workforce Development and Member Relations at the South Carolina Manufacturers Alliance. In the next 30 minutes, James is going to walk us through the work they have been doing in South Carolina and an incredible case study on the innovative and forward-thinking model they developed to connect early talent and the military community to jobs and opportunities in their backyard. As a reminder, we encourage you to use the Q&A box so James can answer your questions live, as we will have dedicated time for discussion. Now, before we begin, let's welcome the man who needs no introduction, my personal friend, James Richter. James is a Renaissance man whose hobbies include woodworking, smoking meat, and beekeeping. But he's also the Director of Workforce Development and Member Relations at the South Carolina Manufacturers Alliance, where he is responsible for member relations, research, and workforce development activities. He previously served as the Deputy Communications Director for the South Carolina House Republican Caucus. He earned a Bachelor's of Arts degree in Political Science and a Master's of Arts in Public Administration from the University of South Carolina. Fun fact about James is his favorite phrase is "no diggity doubt." So if you hear that one today, he's just working to bring us all a little bit of humor in this webinar. James, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We're happy to have you.
I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to be with you, Jim. It's been a while since we traveled the great state of South Carolina, but it's always a pleasure whenever you're able to get back together and joke around about stuff.
Oh, I'm so excited. I have no doubt we'll do some joking today. Before we dive into the case study, James, just for everyone who might not know about the relationship between Tallo and the South Carolina Manufacturing Alliance, SCMA, you'll probably hear us call it SCMA a good bit. Do you mind just telling that story quickly about how that relationship came to be?
Yeah, so first of all, the South Carolina Manufacturers Alliance, SCMA, is a trade association in South Carolina that deals with manufacturers. And so, we have members who are very, very large that employ up to 10,000, 11,000 employees, all the way to a few that employ less than 10. And so I've been with the organization, believe it or not, for like 16 years. It's the only real job I've ever had. And so a few years ago, we knew whenever we were emerging from the after effects of the recession of 2008, that we were going to need to do something related to workforce. All this great stuff started happening in South Carolina for recruitment, new businesses coming in. And so we said, let's go do something. And it was like, hey, let's go create a campaign to go out and say manufacturing is good. But we were always missing that one component of, if you go out and say manufacturing is good, well, what's next? How do we stay in touch with the folks? So the funny part about it is I was kind of struggling trying to figure that part out, what to do. And kind of stumbled upon the Tallo folks, literally just kind of walked in their office one day, met with their CEO, and kind of said in a very discouraging way, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what we're going to do. And then I saw the technology and it just blew me away. And so what we wanted to do was form a partnership and basically work together to go out and say these opportunities are great within the state and create these profiles. And so it was a lot of hard work, but it was one of those things where it was the early days. We were all trying to figure out what we were going to do. Just to give you an idea how long ago that was, Tallo, I think, only had like 5 or 6 employees at that time. And so it was a lot of work, but we've done something pretty special in the state.
Yeah, I think, 5 employees, maybe just starting right with you, James, the first 2 high schools, 150 students, and your team's grown and so is ours. Now we're up to 1.7 million learners across the country in all 50 states. So I think the partnership's been good for both of us. And like I said, I know your team's grown too. So thanks for that introduction, just kind of making the connection. Let's go ahead and just dive right in. I know you've got a beautiful presentation to share with us. And I see Alexis pulling that up right now. So James, I'll just let you take it away and kind of walk through the story here.
Yeah, so before we move on to the presentation itself, what we ended up doing was we created a campaign called SC Future Makers. And again, the idea was, really to dive into the opportunities that were out there. And so, let's get into it. What is Future Makers? And so if, you're really trying to figure out what we're trying to do here, SC Future Makers, we're really trying to build that talent pipeline. We know the opportunities are out there. We know the talent is, but how do we connect with them? So what are our goals now? And this has evolved. And so, really it started off with, let's focus on students. And we integrated military community recently. And the idea behind all of that is a lot of the opportunities that are out there are STEM related. And so what we want to do is find the talent, keep them here. That's what that economic development and regional prosperity is all about. And so what's interesting is, I think this number is kind of a little bit of low-hanging fruit now, because I think this number just continues to grow and grow and grow. There's been tremendous investment within the state for manufacturing and related industries. And so, really when you look at the overlay of what has occurred over the past few years, if you want to go to the next slide, it's going to tell you something that's very interesting. So this is 2017, just a sample of investments, 18, 19, and then 20, and then 21. And if you could just pause there for a sec and take a look at this, these are new investments, whether they are a new facility or it's an expansion. And so if you take a look at this map and you then factor in all of the other existing businesses that are within the state, one of the things that's going to be a challenge is with this great investment that's going to be truly meaningful for a long, long time, how do we ensure that the talent is going to be there to fill these great careers? Next slide. And so, really, if you look at the overall landscape of manufacturing, there's over 5,000 companies who call South Carolina home. On top of that, there's over 6,000 facilities. Manufacturing is important to this state. It pays the taxes. It makes our quality of life great. In fact, 38% of everything that this industry does in the state, goes into the general fund at the State House. And then, so when you look at these jobs that have been created, 43,000 plus, I would assume that's probably well over 50,000 since 2017. And then you look at, all of those opportunities, they're somehow tied to manufacturing, whether those jobs are in communications, research, engineering. There's a lot of opportunities, but really, South Carolina is a state that makes things. So when we launched Future Makers, it was kind of one of those things we didn't know what we were going to get. And I'm really, really excited to say, with all that hard work, we've exceeded over 100,000 students in South Carolina who now have profiles. The value behind all of this, it allows us to connect the dots. So really what I want to do now is I want to give you a visual of how we work with the Tallo folks. So look at this profile here. This is stuff where we were unable to really understand what was the student interested in, what were their location preferences, what were their next steps. And so by working with all of these various schools to get these students to create these profiles, what we're now able to do, if you look at the next kind of iteration of this, we're doing campaigns where we're now connecting these individuals. So here's an example, of a local tech college who has a great program, and they wanted to reach a student like you just saw. And because we worked so hard to get all these profiles created, we now are able to engage the various tech colleges and companies, just like this Florence Darlington Tech example, or if you want to go to the next one, The next slide. You can take a look at it. We can even take this information and tell the companies what's in their backyard. So here's an example of a company I worked with where I was able to find out, what were they hiring for? What type of talent were they looking to fill? And I was able to, within a 50-mile radius, go and tell them where the talent is, where should they spend their time to connect to these individuals who might be a good fit for their organization. And so just like the college example, we're doing stuff for companies now too, where, they want to reach these individuals who, considering the fact that we're still in the pandemic and the after effects behind it, it's more difficult to go in person still, to go in and recruit talent. And so here's a great example of a company in our backyard who wanted to promote their scholars program and apprenticeship opportunity, where, an individual can receive a message and then, sign up as being interested. And so really the way that it works now through those assist campaigns, it's super, super simple. So also we allow companies to, on the Future Maker site, to build public profiles where they can showcase who they are, their career opportunities. Go to the next slide. Showcase their videos. Who are they? What their culture is like, why you should join their team. Give some interesting facts behind it. And then, from there, the individual or the teacher or whomever can go and, see what the next step is, where they can click there and they'll connect to the opportunities. So this was something that was really exciting. Within the past year, this has been something that we talked about for a long, long time, but until there was a staffer that we had at SCMA with a military background who was able to kind of get the ball rolling for this, we were able to integrate utilizing the ping technology that Tallo had created to really match veterans with the opportunities that are out there, military communities, spouses, where it's taking these skills and things that they've been doing, which really matter, not just for this nation, but also for whatever their next step is, to make that connection a little bit easier. So we utilize this technology, career fairs, to bridge that gap of talent and the companies who are looking for that talent. And this is just another example of kind of how the military community, whenever we're doing an event, can send messages. So the idea behind all of this was, again, we know the talent's out there. We know that connections can be made. How do we utilize technology to do so? And give you a prime example, one of the things we're hoping to do in person very, very soon, if you go to the next slide, is, this is STEM Signing Day. This is something that was created in South Carolina. And, that's our governor right there. Each one of these individuals here were invited to come up to the State House. These are not necessarily the high flyers per se, the valedictorians of their various schools, but these are individuals who took the initiative to create a profile, who were going to pursue these STEM activities, and they got seen. And so that was extremely important to be able to recognize motivated individuals who are out in our state, who have the talent and ability to do great things. It's never been done before. So really, when it boils down to it, SC Future Makers is that initiative where we took a piece of technology and utilized it in a bigger effort to where we're out there telling the story about what our great state has to offer.
That was a really quick summary and I appreciate it, James. And we have had several questions come through. So a lot of the questions I'm seeing are about the how. How did you get employers motivated to participate? How did you get educators and schools to participate? So can you talk a little bit about the how?
Yeah, it was not an easy process. And, it's an ongoing process, especially with companies. Companies move sometimes very, very fast, sometimes very, very slow. Our organization has a long history of being in South Carolina. We were founded in 1902. And so it was one of those things where, my previous boss and my current boss have always had great relationships with our leaders in the state. And so, it took a lot of effort to where we said in the early days, if we go and create this, if we go and do this, would you support it? And after we basically, made the case of, yes, move forward, let's figure this out and do it. Well, I mean, honestly, we had to just hit the road and, just drive all over the state. Then going into the schools to convince, superintendents, principals, any other administrators that, this was a good idea. This was safe. And it just took a lot of work. And unfortunately, the way a lot of things work is somebody's going to say, well, tell me what my neighbor's doing, so and so. And so we were able to get a few successes in place with schools initially and with companies to where we had those examples. And it took about 3 years, but it started to organically grow from there. But it was a lot of hard work. It was a lot of hitting the road. It was a lot of let's just figure this out as we go. So really, there's no easy answer, but it can be done.
What would you say, James? Is there anything you noticed about the companies or the schools that were the early adopters? Was there a trend? Were they, hiring for something specific, or were they the partners of yours that were always forward thinking and always progressive? Like, was there something that was different about those early adopters?
Yeah, so it was interesting. Everything that we had researched ahead of time, where there was, with my particular demographic of manufacturing, it's concentrated in, very heavily in certain parts of the state. Well, lo and behold, some of our, biggest supporters were in areas where it was more rural. And really what kind of surprised us about that was that's when we had to kind of hunt to figure out, hey, how can we take advantage of this opportunity? And it really crafted into a narrative that it would allow someone, despite possible economic or geographic challenges, a good opportunity to get seen. And that also meant something very important to the companies too, because a lot of times when you're in a rural community, it's very difficult to know where to start, where to find folks. And so that was something that was very, very interesting in regards to people who would jump on board. They were just looking to do something different, and it just kind of gravitated towards that way. So that was our biggest surprise.
Do you think it was, James, because the rural areas were maybe experiencing the most struggle? Do you think that was it? Why they were like, okay, well, we'll try anything? Or I don't know. You think there's anything?
It wasn't necessarily we'll try anything. It was essentially, we know that our students are doing great things, whether it's like in a career center or something to that effect, and that there's these opportunities out there. So it was kind of that perfect combo where you had some really great progressive school educators who knew that fact and knew that they wanted to provide some resources to their students to take it to the next level. And they had great corporate neighbors in their backyard who said, let's work together. And so it was really kind of that perfect combo.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, we've seen that too, right? In South Carolina and in other states such as Tallo's, and it is the game, the chicken or the egg game, right? You can't pull off a workforce initiative and not have everybody at the table and working together, from your K-12 groups all the way to your senior leaders at businesses and colleges. So when it comes to connecting with those educators, James, I know we did a road show for a while, right? We would just go into the schools and sit with kids and help them build out a Tallo portfolio. But any other kind of tips, tricks, or advice you might give people on the call today when it comes to, from a workforce development standpoint, engaging your local schools and districts?
Yeah, so within my particular industry, manufacturing, this is going to be the same for logistics, IT, healthcare. One of the things that we've seen, and we did a recent economic impact study, is occupations that are going to be in high demand soon, and over the next 10 years, they're going to require an extra level of education, whether you're going to pursue a certificate, associate's degree, or a 4-year degree. Because what's happening is industry rapidly evolves. That's because of technology. And that's a good thing, because as you saw earlier, it helps with the economic investments and just continual prosperity, for our state. And so, really when it comes to the education side of things, at one point in time, it's the same for everybody. You got to figure out what the heck you want to do, or you got to have a plan in place, because, high school is kind of one of those areas where you can go on autopilot, but hopefully you're going to graduate at one point in time. And so you've got to have a plan behind it, and, really articulating the fact that, what we've created here in the partnership with Tallo for the profile side of things really puts the foot forward for these individuals.
Yeah. It's I talk about this a lot, in that there's so much more burden now put on the educators themselves, because employers are going to have to hire that talent earlier than they ever have, right? I mean, we're seeing so many transition from I leave the door of the classroom to I'm employed and I'm on a campus at either at some kind of employer, right? And so while we need students to know about opportunities in their backyard to drive that economic development, we also need the educators to know too. Question came in that's kind of in that same realm still around education. So have you found success connecting with younger talent, such as the middle school or early high school?
So high school was our primary focus whenever we got started, and it continues to be. It's kind of the success that we've seen behind it is whenever we would go in and do these things that we used to call Future Maker Days, where we would go in and take a company and have somebody from that company talk about, the opportunities that they have available to the students. And the idea behind that was to make it a little bit real of, hey, all right, and this is the reason why we want to know who you are and what you're going to do. Thus, they would then go create a profile. And so I'll never forget, we were in a very rural community called Williamsburg. This was maybe about 2018 or so. We had an HR director for a company that was just starting up a youth apprenticeship program. And it was really cool because he was kind of going to do the corporate mantra of this is who we are and that kind of stuff. And I can't remember which staffer was with me from Tallo, but we had this great mantra of coming up there and just being like, you're awesome, you're going to do this, you're going to be great, but we need to know what you're doing. And so anyway, the HR director really kind of started picking up on that vibe and kind of threw his corporate mantra out the door, and just basically stood up in front of the students, said, this is who I am, this is my story, and this is how I got to this company. And, to be honest with you, what we've created, this youth apprenticeship, is something that, we want you to be part of. What happened after that, before the students went to go create their profiles, these students came down from the bleachers, about maybe 6 or 7 of them or something to that effect, all different types of backgrounds, kids that were interested in healthcare, whatever it was, and said, I'm going to go apply for this. And so, it was something where that company then was able to get about 3, I think, youth apprentices a few weeks later to sign on to their first class. And, really it just kind of took it to that extra level. And really the story behind what that individual's personal story, on top of using something that connects them technology-wise, I think really made a huge, huge difference.
I love that story. And that's what's neat, right? A student often only knows about the opportunities that match their immediate bubble, right? And so to think that someone who thought they were on one path spent 30 minutes with you or an employer or a Tallo team member, or even just played around in the system, right? And then discovered an opportunity that otherwise, how would they have known about, or how would they consider? I think those are the stories that make our job more fun, right?
Yeah, and and that was kind of when I said there was a lot of hard work involved in this. That's what we were doing in the early days, going school by school by school, doing those types of what we call rollouts, Future Maker Days, whatever you want to call it. And one of the things I'm really excited about now is my organization and the business community within the state is a very big fan of the technical colleges here in the state. They're a tremendous asset to providing great training and education opportunities. And I swear I kind of see this evolving into is, we were talking a little bit earlier about how there's going to be greater requirements for whatever your next steps are going to be in all these high demand particular fields. And it took a while, but the tech college system is now on board and working with us. And so we do, since we can't do those Future Maker days where we would go in person, we now do these SC days virtually, where we talk about the various industries, and the tech colleges are right there with us. And so, again, just trying to alleviate that I don't know what's out there, connecting to what is out there, and continuing to showcase things as they come up and these great opportunities in our state, is something that, based off of the infrastructure we've built over the years working together, has really, taken us to the next level of, I think we can do a lot of great things.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So I know we're running out of time, but another tip, trick, if you will share with us, James, put on your employer hat, right? So if you were talking to the fellow employers on the call, what would you share is best to get that younger audience engaged? So what information have students found to be most attractive in a future employer?
Honestly, I think it's showcasing your culture. It's, really kind of, again, going back to the demographic that I work with, a lot of them can be, kind of the old school curmudgeon type, but really what they don't really showcase a lot of times is the environment of the opportunities that they have, what that's like. It appears that younger people, although money is always going to be important, it's not the most important thing. Being a part of something you're going to enjoy and really, excel at is something that, I consistently see the younger folks focus on, and it being important and ingrained in kind of their mantra. And so employers, if they showcase that, I think it would be more appealing moving forward in connecting with students.
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that. It's not always about just the paycheck these days, especially with this early generation. How do you, James, talk to traditional employers who don't think that way? They think, okay, I have a job and I need to hire now. They don't think, okay, I need to reach early. I need to have a brand. It's important to invest in early talent. How do you have those conversations with employers?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's become a little bit easier since everybody is, so challenged right now with, attracting talent and just finding folks where, they understand the long game, even though the pressure is there for I need it now. The reality is there's a lot of resources out there already for, trying your best to tackle the I need it now. So, whenever we're working with the employers, we always focus on, hey, this is kind of the long game. This is important for building a relationship with the education community. But let me give you a listing of resources that I know are very good within the state, so that you can also focus on that immediate I need it now. Because, to be very frank with you, I mean, what we've created and, what Tallo does, it's not necessarily that I need it now kind of filler. And, we've always been very upfront with employers. And once you're able to explain that and provide those additional resources of who to connect with, that really gets the ball rolling. South Carolina is a small state. It doesn't take very long for us to make connections and, get people in touch with the right folks. So just, bringing that extra little bit of resources and knowledge on top of, and here's how you can participate in the Future Makers Initiative, is very, very valuable for the employer. So really, there's no easy answer to it. It's essentially, you need to know what's in your backyard. You need to know the appropriate people to work with, and how that can benefit your organization.
Yeah. So we're at 12:30 and I have two really quick questions for you, I think. Okay. Hang with me. So what is, it's kind of a two-parter. What workforce trends are you seeing in South Carolina right now that might be unique to manufacturing? And what do you think you'll see this year in 2022 coming out of the pandemic?
So the weird part about, it's, I'm gonna have to kind of combine those two. One of the things that was really, really interesting about the way South Carolina tackled the pandemic, especially for manufacturing. Again, it's the exact same for all these other types of industrial fields, logistics and construction and whatnot, is our state never shut down. It may have been one of those things where there was quarantine, in fact, or we needed to kind of pause a little bit. I think that was very, very beneficial in terms of retaining workforce. The really weird part, and this is the exact same thing in every other state, is we thought once COVID kind of, came a little bit under control, people would go back to the workforce, and it's just like literally like poof, they're gone. And so, it just doesn't make sense. And, what's going to end up occurring is, manufacturing is going to continue to invest in improving its process. And so, what might come out of this, it's hard to really tell, is, implementation of new technology that, helps get the product out the door a little bit faster. And so it's really hard to tell of what trends to expect. But, really, I think there's tremendous opportunity, with apprenticeships for companies who haven't pursued that at this point in time. That program is absolutely outstanding within the state, whether you're in manufacturing or healthcare, or, you even get an apprenticeship at the pharmacy. And so, I think you're going to see more employers gravitate towards programs and opportunities like that. And, really kind of focus on the long game, because, when we looked at that map earlier in the presentation, this company's invested in this state with the purpose of being here for a long time. And, even though there might be challenges from the standpoint of finding talent, we know the talent's out there. Our focus is to connect that talent with these opportunities. But these companies are here for a reason, and, they'll be here for a long time. So we want to make sure they're going to be successful in whatever comes next.
Yeah, I appreciate that, James. So we are definitely out of time, so I'll let you go. But here's your last question of this session. And this is definitely where you get to say no diggity doubt for us. Question came specifically from our event coordinator, Alexa Nichols herself. And I think she's looking for a specific response, so you can't let her down here. What's been your favorite part about working with SCMA and Tallo and the Future Makers Initiative? Wink, wink. Is it Alexa Nichols?
Yeah. Gosh, well, I had a partner in crime, Shay Tai, early on, who would hit the road with me, and we would go to every single barbecue restaurant there was in the state. One time, after a very stressful day, Jen and I went to the most exquisite restaurant, Hooters, and got margaritas to celebrate some accomplishments. And so, really getting to see the state has always been a joy. But really kind of just seeing what's out there, to be very frank with you. So no diggity, no doubt.
Well, we appreciate it, James. I think we have talked for a couple of years about you telling the SC Future Makers story, because it wouldn't have been as successful as it was today without you and your team and the team at Tallo. So we're really encouraged about the work we've accomplished over the past couple of years together and what is coming in the next year. So thank you, James, for your time. I really appreciate it. Hopefully everyone learned something new. We did have some questions we didn't get to, so I will say, but I just want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I'm going to put my email in the chat. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to email me directly, and I'll reach out to some people who sent in questions. But again, James, thanks for your time. You were going to be the last session in our workforce webinar series, but we're back by popular demand. We've had some requests on some very specific topics. So stay tuned. That schedule will be coming out soon. We're going to talk about some different certifications and technical training options, and some different and kind of new apprenticeship models. So definitely stay tuned for that. We will have more information coming your way. And James, thanks again. And thanks everyone for attending. We really appreciate your time.